Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to a very, very long overdue episode of Corner Flag Convos and Chips. We picked a really great time to come back with the entire landscape of European football being threatened and being thrown up into the air. So we thought we'd come up with a really quick podcast to talk to you guys about our thoughts on the European Super League because it is the topic that's dominating every single news outlet right now in the world. You know, your usual Twitter, football accounts, and then everything else on the global news. So we want to talk about the European Super League, what we think about it, and there's a lot of news that's coming out incredibly quickly with this thing. So I will say that this recording is happening on Tuesday evening. We will discuss and shape our opinions with the information that we have right now under the pretense that tomorrow when we wake up things can be radically different. So whenever you listen to this, just keep in mind that this is the time we did this, so we don't, even if we do sound stupid 3 or 4 days from now, don't blame us. So I'm here with two of my usual guys. You guys can go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, it's Michael Philander, Phil's World 003 Twitter. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope we can navigate this situation here well.
Hey guys, it's Brian Straub over here. Looking forward to discussing this.
Yeah. All right. So let's dive straight into it. It's a lot to discuss. So I wanted to go first here because I suspect, well, I know for sure in terms of one of the guys, but I suspect I'm the only one amongst the three of us who actually liked the European Super League. Now, let me phrase that very, very carefully. I liked the idea of a Super League for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons being that I wanted to see more elite football. There was talks that the way these games would be streamed would be outside of the traditional model. So no NBC, no ESPN, no BN Sport, but it would instead be used on a streaming platform like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, something of a sort. All of that was just rumors with nothing substantial, but that was something that had me interested. Elite football, easy access to streaming, and I read about the UEFA reforms that were proposed a few months ago, and I didn't like them either. So I knew the Champions League was headed for a dilution in quality, and I did think that that was going to be a sticking point for a lot of the big clubs. And I will frame this and say I do support a big club. Yeah, two big clubs. Arsenal, and Barcelona. So I will. That's where my opinion comes from. So if you feel like you support a smaller team, I don't mean it in a disrespectful way, but I always look out for my own club's interests and my own. And it just so happens that the two teams that I'm fond of and I follow very frequently are super teams. So even though Arsenal aren't exactly playing like a super team right now. Anyway, so quality football, easier access to the thing. And I do, based on data that I've done and research that I've done, the Champions League budget payouts in terms of the winners have been really, really bad in recent years. I looked at some data very quickly yesterday. Um, Bayern received 85 million euros for winning the Champions League last year. The Champions League last year itself generated 3 billion euros. So there is a discrepancy there. So I can understand it from the point of the big clubs where there is an issue in terms of how the revenue is shared and how the revenue is split. And they want a bigger cut of the pie, especially in the sense that there's a pandemic going on right now and everybody needs to make more money. Now, I had my criticisms of the Super League as well, even though I did like it and I did want it to go through, where there is an issue I have with the Americanized model. And the Americanized model is this model where it's a set amount of insulated teams that don't get relegated or promoted, and everybody's set in stone. Well, their suggestion was that there are going to be 15 teams that are set in stone with 5 variable teams every year. I like that. I didn't like the insularity of it because I watch the NBA a lot. I have a problem with that in the NBA. In the NBA, there are teams that are consistently bad every single year. I'm talking Atlanta. I'm talking the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm talking the Oklahoma City Thunder in recent years. Teams like that have been consistently poor for a very, very, the Orlando Magic, who've been very, very bad for a long period of time. And there's really no consequence for it in American sports. And that's one thing I liked about European football is that we have a consequence. It's called relegation. So that was something I think that needed to be reformed. But here's really where my official stance on this thing is. It not it's not that I like it. It's not that I love it, sorry. It's not that we needed it in football, but we were headed for this inevitability. Like I said, with the way the Champions League revenue has been distributed to big clubs, with the pandemic hurting these big clubs in the pocket, the fact that these big teams want to play each other more often. When we played Liverpool 2 years ago in the Champions League semifinals, Joseph Maria Bartomeu noted that a game of this magnitude was done so well, and it was two exciting games, and the fan responses in both stadiums were incredible. And he said that we cannot wait every 10 years to play Liverpool, and he made a great point with that. It's like you want to play more of these games more often. You don't want to leave it up to chance to draw these teams in the Champions League. And I don't know about you guys, but I feel like a lot of the time in the Champions League, the same teams end up drawing each other a lot of the time, so you get like a lot of repeat fixtures. Like we just had two legs of the final from last year repeated, and they're both amazing games. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, how often do you get to see Bayern play PSG? We want to see that more often than we did. I think that's only the third time those two clubs have met in recent years, to my knowledge. So we want to see more of it. So, like I said, we were headed toward an inevitability where UEFA themselves are trying to devalue the Champions League and make it more diluted and more watered down. And bigger clubs need a bigger slice of revenue. And also, bigger clubs want more power in the say that they have, because right now UEFA have such a strong monopoly on the way European football is set up. They want that to change. So again, just framing it for you guys that are listening, I don't love it. I like it. I don't think we need it, but it's nice to have. And I felt like football has existed in this sense of money is guiding the process, and money is instituting the changes in football. And it's been this way for, I think, about the last 30 years. I'm not going to pretend that money hasn't always been the driving factor in football. It is a business. There's a respect and there's an emotional attachment that we all have to it, but money is the driving force in football. And it's been about elite teams versus non-elite teams for a very, very, very long time. This isn't something new where we have a group of teams that are much better than their competition. This has always been the way in football. And there is some change in the teams, but very, very minute change. As far as England goes, the Big Six are the Big Six, and they've been the Big Six since the inception of the Premier League. As far as La Liga goes, you have the Clasico duo and then the revival of Atletico Madrid in recent years, but it's been that way for a long time. So this isn't, in my opinion, anything unprecedented in terms of their clubs that are significantly better than other clubs. This has been the way football is, and this is a step towards realizing that and tapping into that to make more revenue to keep these clubs afloat and to keep these clubs sustainable. Did I think it would have um, affected the domestic league? No, it didn't affect the domestic league. They made that clear. And I think that was a sticking point for a lot of people, that they thought this was going to mess up the domestic league, but it's not. It's meant to stop the Champions League and to replace the Champions League for these teams, because, like I said, everybody is feeling hard done by UEFA. And I know Brian and I had a little bit of a back and forth on Twitter yesterday, and I don't want him to feel like my sticking point with this is my sticking point with this is that UEFA are out of control. UEFA have a monopoly, and FIFA to a greater extent. But we'll talk. It's not really about FIFA right now. UEFA have too much of a monopoly, and they're threatening the Champions League in a way that will reduce the effectiveness and will reduce the enjoyment of the Champions League for me. So this was a necessary step to showing UEFA that they don't actually have as much power as they think. Well, those are my thoughts. I did sound a little bit incoherent there, but like I said, information about this is coming out as quickly as by the minute. Up until an hour ago, Inter Milan and AC Milan have since announced that they're going to be pulling out of the Super League alongside the Big Six from the English Premier League. So a lot of stuff is up in air right now. I don't think the Super League is going to happen as quickly as initially looked yesterday. Things are changing very rapidly, but now UEFA, Europe, and European football fans know that going forward, the big teams realize their power, and the big teams know the pull that they have. And I think if they come back to this model, I should say, with a better proposal and a more open, slightly more open, because you still do want these big teams in there, with a more open and with a more straightforward plan, there's going to be much less social backlash than this initial plan relief. But those are my thoughts. I'm really looking forward to hear what you guys have to say.
Okay. As Shevin mentioned, we did have a little bit of a discussion on the Super League over Twitter, and I must say, as he said, I do stand in full opposition to the idea, and it's for a lot of the reasons that Shev that you mentioned, actually. There's this feeling I feel among these big clubs that because of their history, because of their success, that they for some reason feel that they're better than these smaller teams that they have to face in the Champions League, that end up getting there through a very, very rigorous process a lot of the time. A lot of these teams from these smaller countries have to go through massive qualifying rounds just to get to a place where they can even compete in the Champions League, which first off I think is rather unfair at times. But this idea of a UEFA Super League where these big teams with their history and their success feel that they somehow have garnered the right to be in a competition where they don't deserve to be relegated, where they don't deserve to play against these smaller teams is rather ludicrous in my opinion. Because, at least for me, the idea of football has always been that it's a sport based on meritocracy. And like you said, Jeff, we're not gonna deny here that money hasn't played a role and that there aren't richer teams that are more successful. But there have always been the stories of teams that come up against these bigger teams that are able to beat them. And this means more for the fans of those clubs than I think anyone, I guess, from one of the clubs even that we support could even imagine. Because let's be honest, we all support successful clubs here, some more than others. But at the end of the day, clubs like Legia Warsaw, which we've spoken about, or Standard Liège, or Steaua Bucharest, or any of these teams, they deserve to be in these competitions just as much as these bigger teams do. They deserve to have those nights, and those fans just as much deserve to be able to see their team play against these bigger clubs. If we're talking about revenue, these games are massive in terms of revenue for those clubs. So putting yourself in a little bit of a bubble is a bit selfish in my opinion, because the whole idea that's being proposed by this whole Super League is that it's saving football. I don't think that's the case. I think it's just the bigger clubs saving themselves, because a lot of the top clubs that we're talking about here, Barcelona, Manchester United, Arsenal, they all have debt problems. They all have massive debt problems, and this league is the perfect way for those clubs to solve those problems. They're going to get a nice, 300 million, 400 million euro jump in revenue from the jump or something like that they can spend on transfers. I don't know how this helps football. I don't know how any of this makes it better. Going, I guess, off your point with regards to having more competition and having the bigger clubs face them more often, themselves more often. I actually don't think that's all that great of an idea. I personally don't find the games that we see in the Premier League, for example, of like the top clubs with Chelsea and Liverpool, to be all that entertaining. A lot of them end up being 0-0 draws. Not all of them. Some end up being really good games because these are really good clubs. But at the end of the day, I would prefer to watch a team like Borussia Mönchengladbach come into the Champions League, or even Schalke. Rest in peace to Schalke, by the way, with their relegation today. But they beat Madrid 4-1. 4-1 a few years, not all that long ago in the Champions League. That's a massive occasion for those fans. That's a massive occasion in football, because those types of stories are the reasons we love this sport. A league like this is basically erasing all of that. And honestly, I think it comes off as very entitled. It comes off as we have all the money, therefore we should be making all the decisions. We should be calling all the shots. I think that's the reason we're in the problem that we're in the first place, is because money has gotten out of control in this sport, and throwing more money into the fire isn't going to make it any better. Now, with regards to what you were saying about the new UEFA Champions League reforms, I'm totally not for them either. I don't think it's great to see the format that they're putting in. But the UEFA Super League isn't any better. It's worse. And as I've been saying, even on Twitter, like earlier today, just because this whole idea of the Super League has been squashed for now, people do need to turn to the fact that UEFA and FIFA and these organizations are feeding this monster that made sure that the UEFA Super League came about in the first place. This isn't something that stops here. This isn't something where we just say, okay, we saved football. We saved it for today, I feel. But as Shev said, this is something that may come back. And I don't think there is any format of a Super League that can actually be accepted because it's too exclusive. I think we talked about there was a point we mentioned about cultural spread and cultural diversity in football or when it comes to fandom. I remember you mentioned, Shev, and I think that's an important thing to touch on here too, because you were talking about how international fans are just as important as local fans. And to an extent, I do agree. All fans are important. This sport is for all fans. But if we're really taking that into the scope, why are we not looking at the fans of these smaller clubs and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe their feelings about this matter too. Maybe they actually deserve to be part of the conversation as well. And I really don't think these clubs care about that. At the end of the day, like I said, I really feel this is a patch-up plan to make sure that these clubs can continue their erratical spending. And that's honestly how I feel about this league. If this were to ever go through, it would be an extremely sad day for football.
So my take on everything, first of all, I like to say that UEFA has been manipulating European football for a very long time now. We've seen a lot of things in UEFA practices that have not been good, and the corruption that is within UEFA. So it is quite a shame that UEFA actually came out from this situation looking as good guys. Must say that I feel this move to actually create a Super League is basically a greedy move by a lot of the other teams, because firstly, football is about the emotions. Football is about people having a dream. Football is about persons actually seeing that dream come to fruition. One of the most exciting periods, even though I was probably on a shorter stick of it, in the Premier League was to see Leicester, a team that came up just a season before, win the Premier League. This is something that makes people dream. And if a team like Leicester could break up the monopoly that has existed, utilizing players that were basically unseen men to go and win a Premier League, it actually shows everyone that, you know what, you can dream and you can believe that these things can happen. What dream does the Super League create? You have, give or take, 15 teams. These teams will remain in their position. Whoever wins will win. But the fear of not actually winning is not there, because at the end of the day, they're going to still collect a lot of money. And as far as I'm concerned, it actually opens the door for a lot of corruption, a lot of match fixing, and so on. And those are the type of things that you would not like in football. Shevin mentioned basketball. Basketball teams tank just so they could lose enough to actually get higher draft picks. Is that the future of football that we actually want? I don't think so. At least I wouldn't like a football in a world whereby, you know what, losing is actually accommodating. And that's the situation that I believe might happen with the Super League, because teams might lose on purpose just so other teams would get a chance to win. And we all see what happened in Syria not too long ago. This is why I'm not actually amazed that the Syria teams are actually on board with something like this, because they've been notorious for match fixing scandals. In addition to this, I must add that football has become now a situation whereby chairmen basically control the how the finances of these clubs are run. And a lot of times these chairmen have been doing a lot of nonsense. This reminds me of when they had this 2008, they had a recession, whereby the people were actually betting on stocks, and then they were betting that people would actually bet on stocks, and eventually the entire thing collapsed. But the banks had no problem because they know that, you know what, the country is going to bail them out on taxpayers' money. This is not far different from what the Super League is trying to do, because when you look at it, a lot of these clubs have run broke because of bad practices. They go try to fix problems by pelting money at it, and a lot of times these problems aren't fixed, and then you end up digging a hole basically to fill a hole, and you're still going to remain with a hole. And this is why a lot of these clubs are actually in debt. You had Real Madrid started the Galactico era, buying players for an obscene amount of money. And then at the end of the day, a lot of these things did not actually pay off. But when you actually look at the situation, as Relay said, paying off, we're in a situation now. Real Madrid is over $1 billion in debt, and there's actually no escape from what happened. But well-run clubs, like for instance Leicester, like for instance clubs like Southampton, who have no debt, are being basically put up to be killed because of that. And that, I don't believe that makes a lot of sense on the entire foundations that football was built on. Football was always supposed to be a sport for the poor people. Football is a sport that is very easy to play. A football itself is basically the only thing you actually need to play football. Why is it that these basically oligarchs of football are just taking the sport and doing whatever they want with it? And I really admire, a lot of times a lot of people are actually against it, the 50 plus 1 system. The 50 plus 1 system is probably one of the reasons Bayern and our Dortmund or so didn't just went and jump on this bandwagon themselves. Because a lot of people say that, oh, you know what, they weren't invited and so on. But the thing is that Bayern could have, at the time when the Super League formed and so on, Bayern could have gone and sent a message to Perez and say, you know what, we want to join too. But it wasn't the case because that's not how it works. The fans still need to have a say. And I do not think any fan in the right sense would support a breakaway league whereby just a few clubs have a monopoly over everything. And it creates, because these clubs themselves were once small. In fact, these clubs right now, Arsenal, Spurs, and a lot of these other teams are actually not even in Champions League places, and they want to join the Super League and so on, just so they can actually erase the emphasis of their failure and just be, oh, you know what, we don't need to do anything else in life, we could just sit back and enjoy life, just behave like some stuck up rich kid behavior. And there is a great deal of entitlement, because I personally don't think Spurs should be in any type of Super League whatsoever, and I'm a Spurs fan. But with the type of football they play right now, or what they've been playing in the last year, I don't think there is any merit for them to be in any position like that. So my stance on it is completely against it, because I don't see how that is fair to other teams. They kill dreams by doing this. West Ham is basically having a fairy tale season. I think they should actually merit going into the Champions League based on their performance. I must address, however, two things that Shevin mentioned. Shevin said before that if there is a need to see high quality games. I believe that this is a very ludicrous statement, because when you're in the Champions League, by the time you reach to the quarterfinals, the system is set up in such a way that a lot of these teams are actually weeded out from the competition. This is why you have the group stage. You lose two of the weakest teams in the group, and then you progress. There are rare circumstances whereby a team would actually move on from the group stage and go into the 16, and then you go into the quarterfinals. There are rare stages that actually happens, and a lot of times these teams don't do well. And the thing is that even if the team actually went to that stage, there are clubs that will come the next season and cherry pick their best players, and they would not be able to do that ever again. So Ajax, Monaco, all ring bells as it relates to that. So what makes teams play high quality games? If you are the best team in the two best teams in the year Champions League, there's ample amount of games to show it. You would end up in the finals. That's the reality of any tournament sport. Once you are the best, this is why a lot of times it's very easy to predict, especially with football, where there are two legs of competition basically between the clubs. It's all there, so the best team would actually go forward. If over two legs you can't beat the team, it means that you're not better than the team. And that's just the reality of it. If there was a single stage knockout and so on, you could understand that, you know what, teams get lucky on a day or two. But you can't get two legs over a period of time and expect that, you know what, just because I name Barcelona, just because I name Man United, I should probably go through to a finals or so and play Barcelona, play like we say Real Madrid, because you know what, we have history and it would be an entertaining game. That doesn't happen like that. You have to play to prove that you actually merit going into finals. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't be in the tournament. And that is basically what is happening with a lot of these teams. They realize that they don't have, well, they pelt money at the problems and it didn't work. So they're trying now to solve their problems by, you know what, we screw everybody else and we can get your own thing. And I think that is wrong. So that's my last bit on it. I don't know if anybody wants to add any other points on it, but that's what I think.
I just want to jump in on the little point you mentioned on 50+1, and I think the fact that 50+1 still exists is a testament to the fact that fans of at least German clubs look at football as something more than just numbers in a bank account and trophies. And people can laugh at me all they want for saying this, but I didn't become a Dortmund fan, for example, because of the fact that they were super successful. Yeah, there's a Champions League win. Yeah, there's however many German. I think it's eight German titles at this point, and 4 Pokals that we have. That's all great and everything, but I don't think you become a football fan because of that. Personally speaking, and like I said, just because this 50+1 rule is still a thing, I feel that people become fans of the sport because of the community and because of their attachments to the club. And I think that's the guiding principle here that we're losing. These are the things that make people fans of the clubs that they are, at least in my opinion, and at least in my case. And I feel that's a lot more important than having a league where all the best teams face each other and we have quote unquote high quality football. I honestly prefer to watch Gladbach play Frankfurt twice a year than watch Liverpool play Madrid 5 times a year, because I could care less about those teams. They're not my team. It might be an entertaining match to watch every once in a while, but something like the Super League just isn't attractive to me because there's no soul to it. There's absolutely no soul to it. It's money driven, and at the end of the day, it's not the driving factor for most fans. And so I think that putting a tournament like this in place doesn't do anything for football. It doesn't do anything for the quality of football, because at the end of the day, I think the quality is the fans. The reason I fell in love with Dortmund, firstly, and I mentioned this on Twitter as well, there was Polish players that played for it. That was the initial in. But I stayed for the ethos of the club. I stayed for the soul of the fans, the yellow wall. And then when I went there in 2017 and noticed how accepting everyone was, I was like, wow, this is a sense of community. And that's something that Russell Brand actually mentions in a video that I also shared as well. Football fans are just looking for a sense of community. And this league is doing absolutely the opposite. It's creating its own enclosed community. Football is a community for everybody. And this is the exact opposite of something that is for everybody, because it's not. Not everyone is a Liverpool fan. Not everyone is a Tottenham fan. Not everyone is an Arsenal fan. Not everyone is an AC Milan fan, etc., etc. These are not the only teams out there, and these are not the only teams that deserve some sort of special privilege.
Now, obviously we have very, very different opinions on this, and I think we all got our points across very very strongly. What I want to say is to pick on points that both of you made, and I'll do this very briefly because I know we said it's not going to be a long recording. Um, the new Champions League reforms, you know, that's very soulless. So in 4 years, Brian, are you going to watch the Champions League? Are you going to feel the same attachment and emotional connection to the Champions League? Because the Champions League wants to add more teams because more teams, and I don't. It's not just adding more teams, but they're also changing the format of the Champions League. They're going to change it to something that similarly recognizes the Super League in the sense that there's going to be a longer group stage, and then they're going to go straight into a knockout system from the group stage there. Why are UEFA doing this? Because UEFA want 100 more games in order to generate more revenue. So my point to either of you is this, and this is my concluding argument. You can have the future of European football decided by UEFA, who are an incredibly corrupt organization who's had multiple dealings with corruption and scandal and ineffectiveness in dealing with things that actually plague the game, such as sexism and racism. Or you can put the hands of European football in the owners of the super rich clubs. Now, I understand it's like asking you to pick between a rock and a hard place, but the way I just described it, I think the answer is fairly obvious. I just we're talking about an organization that Glenn Kamara was racially abused by a Slavia Prague player, and a Slavia Prague player got 10 games in a ban, and Glenn Kamara got 3 games banned for what? He was racially abused, but he got a 3 game ban. Why? Um, and then you see the drivel that Slavia Prague fans demonstrate and post up before every single game as it relates to black players and the way the UEFA does not denounce them or their racism. Let me tell you something. The banners those people hold up before games, if I was UEFA, they would not exist in any European competition, but they're there, you know? So, like I said, you guys have to now ask yourselves internally, who do you want lighting the way for European football in the years to come? Because I know I don't want it to be UEFA. I don't love the fact that I have to rely on Joel Glazer or John W. Henry or guys like that, but I have a track record. I've seen the track record with UEFA. I live it every day in terms of the football I watch. I don't want UEFA leading in the current state anyway, leading the football into the future, European football. And I don't want FIFA in its current setup leading football. Why? So that's why I said there's a sort of inevitability to this. And that's
So
why I say that there's something that this felt like it was coming for years. And this is finally a realization of bigger clubs realizing that we have so much of the power than UEFA would like us to believe. Why are we not acting on it? So this is them trying to act on it, I will say, because obviously the Super League in its current state is not going to go forward. So something like this will come up again. And I think the big clubs are now cognizant of the fact of what the backlash is and what they need to fix and what has to be changed. But I do suspect we will see something like this manifest itself in the very near future. And UEFA will have a reckoning coming for them in terms of the biggest clubs deciding their own future rather than having their future decided for them.
so Shevin, quick interjection, right? You believe that these owners and so don't have racist tendencies, don't have corrupt practices, and so on. So I really don't understand why you're trying to make a distinction between club owners and UEFA. As far as I'm concerned, both of them probably doing the same things. Both of them. I have never seen Real Madrid take action on any stance against racism directly. I haven't seen it. Right. In addition to that, right, when you got these teams and so on, they haven't done anything themselves. The other day I saw did this guy from, I think it was Real Betis, the strike no Celta striker, what's his name, is Iago Aspas. When I think he was in a racist scandal, no, none of these clubs didn't come out publicly and said it, oh, you know what, they're against it. Up to recently in Valencia, their center back got racially abused and he walked off the field. No one did anything. None of these owners did anything. Maybe if it was a situation whereby these owners were actively coming out against racism, you could have been like, oh, you know what? These owners are actually good people to put the vested interest in. But some of these same owners are racist. And there's a thing from even at basketball level, Clippers former owner was actually caught making a lot of racist statements and so on. How you know that Florentino Perez et al. Don't behave the same way? And this is the thing that I don't really understand. These club owners will only do things in what is their best interest. Similarly with UEFA. The thing that you probably need to call for is UEFA to have stronger action against racism. And if there is no action against racism, there needs to be repercussion based on this. It's not a situation whereby UEFA is showing us that UEFA is showing us that they're corrupt and they're racist, and so we're going to go on to our unknown that we don't know if they're corrupt and we don't know if they're racist. And the thing is it too, Florentino Perez was actually mentioned in some other documentaries. Players and so on come out to say that there is evidence to show that he's racist. So I don't believe in what he actually said just now.
So
So-
just to clarify with you really quickly,
uh,
I'm not saying that this is the thinking of these club owners that, oh, I'm better than UEFA, let me go do my own thing. I'm saying that me as a fan, if I'm going to put stock in anybody, I'm not going to put stock in an organization that has been failing European football in many aspects for multiple years. I rather take my chances elsewhere. I don't know any of these club owners as people. I'm not going to put my head on a block for nobody. And if things come out about them, about the way they are and the way they actually are, I'll admit that I'm wrong to put my faith in them. But I'm not going to put my head on a block for nobody. But what I'm saying is, I don't trust an organization that has continually failed European football in multiple aspects, not just racism, right? Everything else, development of the game, grassroots football, revenue distribution, corruption scandals, refereeing scandals, all of that. I'm done with UEFA. I've seen UEFA's track record over the previous years. So please, frame that properly in the way that I said it. I'm not saying that these club owners decided that I'm better than UEFA. I'm saying that me as a fan, when it comes to who I want to see lighting the way forward for European football, I'm done with UEFA in that aspect. They didn't do
just,
their job. So
just
somebody else has to step up and do. Sorry, Brian, go ahead.
No, sure. And I just kind of want to say because you did frame the question as who would I rather have at the head of all this, these super rich clubs or UEFA? And call me a romantic for this answer, but the answer is neither at this point. Or at least not UEFA in the way that it is right now. You are extremely right in saying that there are problems with UEFA. That the way that the Champions League is being reformed is not ideal. There are massive problems. Racism, first and foremost, is one of the things that should be taken care of. And it sometimes doesn't. Well, not sometimes. A lot of the time, it doesn't get the attention that it deserves from the organization that should be doing first and foremost everything that it can to stop that. I condemn them for the way they treated the whole scandal with regards to the Slavia player as well. That Slavia player should have been banned indefinitely. Granted, from what I understand, he's already extremely old anyway, and this 10-match ban will already we can assume we'll never see him again. But it was an opportunity to make a bigger statement, and they didn't do that, and that's on them. No one is saying UEFA is a saint. No one is saying that UEFA is perfect. Honestly, at this point, we've seen what the fans can do if they really want to get behind something. We've seen what they can do in 48 hours. It took 48 hours for fans to stand up and tell these massive clubs and their owners to just shut up. Just be like, no, we don't want this. And now that we've seen that we can do that, we should hold UEFA more accountable with all these things. We should make sure that they do better with all these things. We should make sure that they try to stamp out all these other monsters that are plaguing the sport, because there are so many. There are massive problems. There's inequality in pay for women as well that we have to address. These are all things that that need to be addressed. But I really don't think that the way to go is to pour more money on it and to give control to all these other clubs. Because at the end of the day, it's kind of like what Mike said. They're only going to look out for their own interest. I really don't think that if the Glazers or if Perez or if Agnelli are in charge of, the direction in which football goes, that any of this is going to change. If there's absolutely no way to say they're doing any of this for any of those reasons. They're doing it for profit. At the end of the day, that's all it is.
So yeah, of course. I never like I started off by saying that
I know
this is
you
a
didn't. I
very
know you didn't.
revenue driven move. Yeah, right.
I know you didn't say that you didn't know that, but that's kind of the point here. We're basically saying that this is the lesser evil. I don't believe so, because nothing is going to change. It's only going to get worse. It's only going to become more stratified, and none of the other issues that we find important are going to be addressed. So it's not a solution. Right now, what people need to do is keep this train moving. Keep this whole movement, whatever you want to call it, moving.
But the
That's what
thing
we
is,
need to do.
but the thing is, they're not going to. Like the way the Champions League has been and the way UEFA has been, it's been this way for a very, very long time, Brian. I think people are going to be very satisfied and say that, oh, hey, because listen, if what comes out of this is that we get a proper Champions League with much better revenue distribution, with much better respect to the clubs that generate the money, and that these clubs feel needed and wanted in this Champions League, so they don't feel the need to separate, I'm all for it. But what I'm saying is that people are now going to feel this sense of satisfaction that, oh, hey, we stopped the Super League from forming. I guess we're cool now. Everything's back to the way it should be, but it's not. That's what I told you earlier today or yesterday. I can't remember which one it was. Football right now, everybody has to get rid of this idea that football is still pure and football is still holy. It's not been for a very, very long time. We're not even talking in the last 20 years that football has been good in quotations. Football has been very not good for a long time. And we need to have a drawback closer to what things used to be. I get that. We also need to strike a certain balance in knowing that football and football clubs, in order to survive, we need to have a consistent revenue stream. And I know what you're saying, that if you need money and you need to have structure, the way to do it isn't to make this sort of super league, which is why I said initially that this wasn't something that was needed, but rather something that felt inevitable. So now what needs to come out of this for us to preserve things and keep things in quotes the right way is that we need to get rid of this in my opinion, we need to get rid of this Champions League reform that's coming up. The people that are in the executive body of UEFA, they have to step down because they failed football for a very, very long time. If this means that the current club presidents that signed up for the Super League and the club directors should step down in um in response, I'm for it. These are just bodies of people. These can be exchanged quickly. But what you need to do is that we need to establish a certain ground right now in football where things get better at the critical issues of the game. And like we all mentioned, the racism, unequal distribution
Yeah,
of revenue for women's sports, and things like that. We need to have people who are serious about addressing these things.
and
But
I
And
agree with
it's
you.
Shevin,
got to a
Shevin, no,
point.
no, no. Wait, one thing though, I must interject there, right? You said that the clubs need a constant stream of revenue. I do believe that the amount of money that actually in profit that these guys are collecting is enough. But the problem exists when they want to live above their means, and that is what creates the problem for them. So when you have teams like Real Madrid saying that, we could just spend $100 million on players and there isn't going to be any repercussion, it's them digging themselves into a hole, and they cause the inflation that now they can't cope with. So I don't think it's situation about revenue stream, because even if they get constant revenue stream, they're going to desire more money. These clubs that form this breakaway league have been collecting a lot of money because they have international fan bases that actually get a lot more money into their clubs from franchise and merchandising and so on and so forth. So I don't think the problem is fixing the problems by pelting more money at them. The fault that UEFA has, that I am extremely angry at UEFA for, is them not enforcing proper financial fair play that would have kept these clubs in check, and they would have prevented a situation whereby they're how much $1 billion in debt from ever happening. But no, UEFA always try to take soft corners on these issues. So when teams like Manchester City are actually getting away with overpaying and basically taking youth players from all over the place that they're against the regulation, and they're not taking the initiative to actually impose stronger penalties on these teams. That is why this situation here has befallen us. And similarly with racism, when racism happens, UEFA doesn't take a proper stance. You can't have players being racially abused and then you're going to try to blame the players. UEFA themselves need to take a tougher stance on things. But the creation of a Super League, even let me imagine it, the Super League created, there will not be penalties for these same things happening. They're going to try their best to pelt money at the problems. I can envisage Real Madrid, one of the Real Madrid players probably abusing one of the Spurs players. And next thing you know, Real Madrid said, "Oh, you know what? Oh, you just come to a settlement. Here, I give you this amount of money. It's not going to affect me, and you could probably just do whatever you want at this point in time. Don't worry with anything."
And I mean, just going off of everything you said with regards to the upcoming Champions League changes again, I 100% agree with you. And as I've said before, in our discussions, fans really need to hold these people accountable. And once again, I'll say it. Call me a romantic, but I think this whole Super League thing might have been a blessing in disguise, because people actually like. It's not something that's been hidden, right? We've known that money has been a massive issue in the game for God knows how long now. Like you said, football hasn't been good, or not good, but like football hasn't been pure for a very long time. Money has been a massive part of the game, as you said, business, et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, I feel this was a real sticking point. We really came close here to having basically a monopolized, or not, maybe not a monopolized league, but a league that's only accessible by those who have the means, I guess. And I think it really scared people, and I think it'll really open their eyes to it. I've already seen a lot of responses to it, and I've already seen a lot of people saying, like, let's not forget, this is not the first time, or not the first time, but this isn't the first issue that's come up. This is a monster created by UEFA, and people know this. And I just feel that this will be a turning point. I think I will speak for myself here. I'll say I won't forget, and I will make sure to continue to, for whatever my reach is, which isn't massive, I will continue to remind people of the issues that football is facing, so that we don't forget. And I will be extremely sad if this turns into just something where we just simply passively sit by and let things continue in the way they are. Because at the end of the day, I don't like the way the new Champions League is supposed to look. I don't like the safety nets for clubs. I don't like, honestly, if Dortmund were to qualify for the Champions League by a safety net, basically just based on their name, I would be embarrassed. I would be absolutely embarrassed, because I'm like, wow, we just weren't good enough. Right now, if we don't qualify for the Champions League this year, I'll take it. We didn't deserve it, if that's the case. But at the end of the day, the top clubs that are playing the top competitions should not be playing it based on their name. They should be playing it on based on their performances on the damn pitch, and that's the end of it. And if we're talking about all the other problems, now is the time to address it. But this whole new league that excludes people, excludes other teams, is not the answer. It's not. It's not the lesser evil.
Well, that ended up being way longer than I think that we anticipated. Well,
It's a
I
charged
think
topic.
I know, right? Things are left in such a way now where, well, the Super League is going to be suspended, or any idea of it is going to be suspended. So I guess we're waiting to see what happens now. But that's it from us. We'd really like to hear what everyone has to say. So feel free to reach out to any of us on social, or to reply on the YouTube videos, comment section, or anything of the sort. Do look out for our Instagram posts that we make frequently. I know Brad has been working really hard on those. We're trying to keep you guys updated with little snippets of news, or bites of information. So this is us signing off. This is me, Shevin, Mr. Super League, as my friends in here would like to call me. You can follow me on Twitter at Shevin_141, and you will see that I will be tweeting a lot of Super League propaganda.
So Michael Philander here. You can reach out to me at Phil's World 003 on both of my on Instagram and Twitter. So yeah.
And once again, this is Brian Straub signing off. My Twitter handle is actually changed. It's actually Brian__ Straub 94. Yeah, I decided there was a need for change. But yeah, you can reach out to me there. Feel free to have a chat.
All right, guys, take it easy. Thanks for being on here, and thanks for discussing. And everybody, stay safe. Good night.
Night, guys.